Okay, welcome to this new roundtable focusing on e-commerce logistics. My name is Max Henry from the Global Supply Chain Council. I'm very pleased to have you here joining us for this new discussion. Some of you know this is part of an ongoing discussion that we have on different topics related to supply chain. We have those roundtables happening on a weekly basis. So if you're again interested to join us and follow us as we discover different part of supply chain management, make sure to check out our events calendar on our website. So today we're all going to be talking about e-commerce logistics. Our focus mainly for this discussion is going to be around the latest trends. We're going to talk a lot about technology, obviously, and also different aspects. If you have any questions for the speakers and panelists, please use the Q&A button located on the left side of your screen. It's called question and answers. You can click on that and you can push your question, and we'll get those questions again as they come. Also, if you arrive late or anything, we'll be sharing the recording after the event, so you have a chance to watch the entire discussion if you miss part of it. So let's maybe first start with a quick round of intro. I would like to give a chance to each of you to introduce himself and herself. Maybe starting with you, Tejasvie, and just give us a quick intro about who you are, what's your background, and what you do right now. Welcome. Go ahead.
Hello everyone, I'm Tejasvie. I'm located in Middle East, Dubai. I have close to 6.5 years of work experience. I've been working with Known in their Q-commerce division. I lead their supply chain. Started my career in Middle East itself, did a couple of projects in Singapore as well as part of my curriculum. But yeah, I worked in Saudi, all from the logistics front for e-commerce. Um, I also lead a women supply chain group, which is across Middle East and APAC. Yeah, that's all about me. Looking forward to the session.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on, we have André as well. Hi, André, welcome.
Hi, thanks, Max, for having us. Yeah, my name is André. I've been in Thailand since 2012, most of the time in e-commerce. 2012 was the beginning of Lazada. I was one of the guys starting the business. And since then, also have managed, of course, different projects. For example, CP Group's retail expansions into e-commerce like 7-Eleven and Macro Group, which I did until 2021. And currently I'm more in a consultancy/project management position, helping bigger companies like logistic companies to further improve their e-commerce services around the globe. Nice to meet you guys.
Great to have you also. Okay, moving on, we have Debasish. Welcome. Go ahead, yeah.
Good evening, Max. Good evening, everybody, all the participants. My name is Debasish Mukherjee. I've been in several cities in India, but last 20 years I've been staying in the city of Hyderabad. Overall experience of about 32, 33 years, of which 28 years have been with the logistics and supply chain industry, starting with TNT long back, when I even did not know what TNT is all about. So been with Courier, Express Cargo, global relocations, and latter part of the career, I spent about a couple of years trying to set up one e-commerce platform, okay, which I'm going to speak a little later about. And then last 6 years, I've been associated as a faculty trainer and a consultant, primarily with business schools and universities in Hyderabad, primarily, and also associated with one of the state government as a consultant, as a supply chain consultant, and also briefly with one major port in the state of Andhra Pradesh as a consultant once again. So look forward to, I've seen from the profiles of my fellow panelists. While I speak, I am sure I have a lot to take away from this session today. So I want to hear from them as well. Thank you very much, Max.
Okay, thanks a lot. You're very welcome. Okay, and last but not least, Sandeep, go ahead, introduce yourself here.
So my name is Sandeep Chatterjee. I lead the supply chain and sustainability practice for IBM. Previously, I've worked with Deloitte, KPMG, Tata Motors, and Oracle Consulting. So I have consulted all across the globe, mostly in the supply chain space across industries. And again, thank you so much for inviting me and looking forward to a very, very fruitful discussion.
Okay, so I want to first touch upon, the evolution of the logistics sector, specifically around e-commerce, and just get your perspective about how the logistics sector has grown, especially in the last few years with the pandemic, post-pandemic, and the type of impact that that logistics sector had on the e-commerce industry. Could you share your views about, each of you about what you think has been happening, especially in the last 3-4 years, when it comes to e-commerce, again, logistic sector? Anybody?
So maybe I
If I
will
may,
go in. Oh.
Okay, go ahead, Sandeep.
please, Sandeep, carry on.
Oh,
So,
okay, Debasish.
so if
Okay.
I look at it, I think e-commerce was a revolution because that's how people started taking supply chains more seriously. Because previous years, if you had a brick and mortar company, people thought that these were most the delivery guys, and if you have a truck manufactured out of a unit, the truck will wait. So people had their own time. But e-commerce, with the customer tolerance time reducing drastically, I think that is where the supply chains got a lot of importance. And one good thing about COVID is, of course, marketing, finance, everything was important. But finally, when it spoke about survival, I think it was the supply chain guys who were actually helping people survive. So that way, and e-commerce was the way to go during COVID when everything was under shutdown. So that way, I think this growth has been unprecedented. Very challenging times. The customers have become more demanding. People are, right from a 1 day delivery, we have come down to something like a 10-minute delivery. So exciting times. Supply chain segmentation is again one aspect. What we have seen is, earlier you had the same supply chain for the whole of the company, but now with different channels, different products, I think supply chain segmentation is actually following what we do as part of marketing segmentation.
Okay, Debashish.
Uh, uh, to be very honest, I'm fortunate to have seen this industry very closely for 28 long years, and post that also, as a trainer, I have been associated with the industry. How much has changed really? Nothing much, to be very sure. Uh, the customers wanted deliveries fast. It was there before. Today as well, customers do not compromise on deliveries. Customers wanted tracking earlier as well. Customers want visibility today as well. Okay. uh, Customers wanted damage-free, pilferage-free, or whatever deliveries earlier as well. Even the same applies today as well. In case of theft, damage, pilferage, customers expected, refund. Customers expected compensation. Customers expect compensation today as well. What has changed is technology. Everything that has changed is because of the technology and tremendous application of technology. Earlier, we used to track a shipment going from, say, as I said, that I lived in various parts of the country. I was in Delhi. So a shipment going from Delhi to New York, and if I had to track the shipment, and if it was an urgent customer, I had to make a telephone call, or I used to send a telex. Today, I can track the shipment in no time. So technology has completely disrupted the way this particular, I'm talking of the logistics sector, is completely changed. Otherwise, I think customer demand, their expectations of delivery, the expectations of quality of delivery, and the service as a whole from what went. I have spent a decent amount of time with global relocations, international relocations, like moving of personal effects from one country to the other. And I think it's one of the most underrated industry because it's very tough to handle personal effects of customers. Very demanding, okay? And sometimes you have to track a container, you have to track a shipment. Customs clearance for personal effects are quite complicated, right? So if you see the expectations of the customers, and as rightly Sandeep said, yes, probably the expectations have enhanced, has grown, but that has been supported by the technology that we currently have. So that is actually helping us to keep pace with the customers' expectations. Otherwise, I don't think physically much has changed.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, Tejasvie, yeah, what's your view about the last few years? Yeah.
I think the shift from brick and mortar to omni-channel, also in parallel with e-commerce growing in, has become more post-COVID. Reason being, customers are now more aware of their time, where is it going? Internet penetration has increased, and also customers are more preferring convenience. Before it used to be like, yeah, I need my product, even tomorrow is fine, day after tomorrow is fine. It's not a P0 for me. But now we're sitting in a world where customers want the products in next couple of hours. Like example, I'll call out a case in Middle East itself. Initially, till last year, we were okay getting deliveries next day. That's what any product, even it's an iPhone or clothing or anything. Now we are looking at iPhone getting delivered in 10 minutes. iPads, everything is getting delivered in 10 minutes. Like that's where I think the convenience, fastness, lack of patience is going towards, but also the quality of service. The refunds which Debashish was talking about, yes, the supply chain has become more complex and network driven in the last mile front. And that's what is impacting the upstream demand planning and, the global trade as well. That's what I think.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, André?
Yeah, very interesting. I copy most of the opinions, so I'm just not so sure it hasn't changed that much. So yes, I'm also agreeing that tech is definitely one of the main enablers that all of this works. But it very much also depends on. We had a quick chat before the group actually started, right? It depends on the maturity of the market as well and the size of the market. I think comparing Dubai, Q-commerce and e-commerce with India, let's say. It's a whole nother dimension in the end. So I think in general, if you look at markets that are slightly more mature, what definitely I think has changed is global trade, so cross-border shipping, even intensified even further during COVID. Alibaba has invested massively in different regions in the world, but also other companies. And yes, of course, the last mile delivery, which really has changed and had changed. I think a recent example, I'm in Germany at the moment visiting my family. Here, being a very mature market, the 10 minutes delivery is actually tough for many reasons. One is, of course, cost and the investment that is necessary to achieve that, and a couple of other reasons. So yeah, I think it really depends on the market. And just the last comment, which I think is always interesting to look at, e-commerce consumption has increased during COVID, and it has come down slightly after the pandemic has ended. But if we look at the growth curve in general, and we just take out the little spike in consumption, it's actually still on a continuous growth, which is quite sustainable, I would say. So it has come down, but if we would just skip the COVID time, it's a healthy growth in the end.
Okay. There's a question which relates to this, and you mentioned that it might have slowed down after the pandemic. So this question: do you think that people are returning more into stores? Any impact on e-commerce and the way the products are delivered? I think it feels that people are changing the way they order online. They don't order the same type of products, or they focus maybe more on groceries, which are heavy, or that they don't want to go and get it at the supermarket. What's your view on this? How are people selectively, using e-commerce now to receive products? Anyone?
So maybe I will just go in first. So if I look at it, of course, during COVID, it was almost 90-95% e-commerce. But of late, what we have seen is people are missing the human touch. While if I'm in a situation where there is a huge traffic jam when I go to a mall, I will definitely prefer ordering it online. But in case I want to have an experience, because nothing can beat a human touch. So it's high tech. There is a high touch aspect. So we are seeing people again moving to stores as well, because something people were doing it behind doors. I think people have really got saturated with that. So definitely this will have a effect on e-commerce, because now you, of course, you had a both the channels. But now, earlier maybe the stores portion was very much skewed, but now there's a more healthy, I will not say healthy, a more equitable mix between e-commerce and the stores. So while Tejasvi mentioned about omni-channel, we want to give the same experience, but there are people who are ordering online but picking on up stores. There are people who are going to stores comparing prices online before they buy. So I think the hybrid model is here to stay. It will not be 100% skewed on any aspect.
Max, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Max, I keep saying that by default, COVID has left behind certain practices which will stay even if COVID has left us. One of them is online shopping, and particularly if I see what's happening in the food sector, ordering food online, and when you visit the restaurants, you definitely see an effect, even though COVID has left us. I mean, you don't see that crowd in Hyderabad or Mumbai, for example. We used to see a large crowd in Delhi as well. On weekends, particularly, people love going physically to restaurants and now you go to any restaurant, even though, as I said, that fear of COVID that infection has gone, but the crowd is not actually going back to the restaurants and others, and they prefer to order online. So I do believe that this is a habit which COVID probably has left behind and is going to continue. Yes, I do accept what Sandeep said, a hybrid model, but I'm not sure whether because of this convenience factor that I can sit at home, watch TV, and still get the food online, watching a match or whatever it may be. That is going to be probably the going to stay with us.
I think I can quote some numbers on how Debashish was telling, right? Zomato versus Swiggy, the year-on-year growth has been 10% each. And the number of orders density has increased so much that they're still expanding. The people are going out when it is required and need dresses, while the consumption of online food is still growing. So it's a mix and it's a choice that is left to the customer, I think. And the supply chain, the last mile bit of deliveries has become so complex that even if it's 5 minutes extra delayed, it's like people can't wait for it. I think that's the way we are heading towards.
Okay. Yeah, Andre?
Yeah, again, very interesting. I agree. So I think in COVID, we tapped into new verticals that haven't been that interesting for consumers before COVID. And yeah, you quoted some numbers. I think they're here to stay. I can just reflect a little bit on consumers going back to shopping malls. So I see in Thailand, it's one of the countries that is very hot. So people enjoy going to the shopping mall, but it's not just for the purpose of shopping like it is in many countries. But simply to hang out, let's say, to eat, to have little almost local markets. So I think it's just saying people go back to the shopping mall for the purpose of shopping. I would say no, but in most countries, especially those that are very hot, the shopping mall is not just a shopping mall. Like an iPhone is not just a phone. I would say almost. So yeah, but I think maybe that's something we could also tap on the omni-channel idea. I mean, everyone talks about it, but I think there are very few businesses that properly have integrated that and also educated the customer using it. So really being able to do everything across multiple channels and being informed, for example, through an app on their purchasing history and activities. So that's something I mean, companies talk about it, and there's a multi-channel approach for most companies, but a proper omni-channel approach, I think we still have a couple of years to innovate and to educate customers.
Andre, you're based in Thailand. I would just want to touch upon those markets a little bit more. What do you think is still the hardest market when it comes to e-commerce, and specifically around the challenges in logistics? We heard a lot about Indonesia, the Philippines, and obviously, places like Vietnam, Thailand, but also, of course, India, given the size. What's your take on this? Are those markets still offer a lot of potential for growth?
I think so. I think if you look at the recent numbers, and I mean, the estimates are often wrong, especially, I mean, even if they come from Google, for example, and you look back at old reports, they're mostly wrong, mostly underestimated actually in terms of growth, which is interesting. I do think there's still a lot of potential in all the markets. If you talk about difficulties, I mean, there's always the geographic difficulty. For example, Indonesia, also India has to offer. I think Thailand is a very easy country in terms of logistic. There are not a lot of remote places and islands to access. The logistics works pretty well. But I think the growth, of course, comes mostly from what I just mentioned before, companies offering continuous improved service, other verticals, and also consumers starting to change some of their habits. I think groceries is a big one still that is slowly growing, and most people have just used that service first time in COVID. But I also see, especially in Asia, people going back a little bit to offline because, for example, the fresh markets, it's very unique to certain countries, are not exactly online, and people sort of want to see the quality that they receive. Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about India as well. I mean, there's been a lot of excitement about the market, tremendous size country, a lot of players, lots of competition, a lot of startups focusing on e-commerce logistics. It's a very competitive market. What's your view on this? Is it still a market where there's growth and where, for example, the players, the 3PLs and the players in e-commerce logistics can actually make money?
So if I may go first.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So, India, I think the way I was observing the market, or it is like India is not one India. Like it has like different layers where it's tier one, where we actually kind of solve for supply chain and logistics, but there is a huge chunk of 80% of India which is rural, tier two and tier three places where the internet penetration is increasing now. So that's where the complexity of supply chain is kicking in, and that's where all these new startups who are coming in and trying to solve that with tech, for example Unicommerce or Locus or any of these guys who are just trying to, because they're the end, it's not as easy as a pin code, because one village itself has one pin code, but in that what all other areas, so that network has become so intense that it's difficult to figure it out. Like for example, I come from a village called Anaparti, which is closer to Hyderabad, which is 500 kilometers from Hyderabad. But initially, Amazon never delivered there. Now also, Amazon's delivery is like three days, 3 days stat. But there's next place, which is Rajamandri, that is like next day delivery. So the complexity is, they are coming down and seeing these problems because that's where the market is right now. Whereas tier one, it's getting saturated. That's what I see it, at least.
Okay, Sandeep, Debasish, what's your view on the Indian market and its potential? Yeah.
Max, if I can throw some figures, very rough figures, as you rightly said, that the market has been growing very fast. E-commerce, even though we give some discounts to the the authenticity of figures, but still there has been the e-commerce sector probably has been growing at a rate of anything between 20 to 22%. And if you see the logistics sector as well has grown from 4 to 5% to almost 9.5% growth. So there has been, so you can actually you can connect the growth between the e-commerce sector as well as the logistics sector. I completely agree with Tejasvie that despite the fact that the Indian 3-tier and the 4-tier cities are growing fast, okay, even 20 years back, a city like Rajamundry, probably, for example, or anywhere for that matter, was not easily accessible otherwise, but it's growing, it's changed completely, okay. So there is a lot of potential. So what we are talking of today and what we can see happen in 10 years, so the figures could be mind-boggling. But one thing I would like to say, and we know that the last mile delivery, for example, it constitutes probably anything between 25 to 26%, and that is probably will have an effect on the delivery, on the overall cost. And there's one interesting part I would like to add as far India is concerned. Whenever we are talking of logistics, we often refer to deliveries, the speed, the kind of vehicles we are using in e-commerce. There's something that we need to catch up very fast, and something probably we are not probably giving attention to is the way deliveries are made at your doorstep. Okay, the way a delivery boy comes from Amazon or Flipkart or Big Basket for that matter. Okay, right from their attire to the way they speak to you, the way they behave with you. I repeat, it's changing, and it's not uniform for everybody. But I think there one sector, and for which probably the growth that is projected may take a hit, is because of in order to cope up with this fast pace, some of the companies are compromising on the quality of these. When I say last, I'm saying the last of the last mile. That means the delivery, while it is made at your doorstep, they are in a hurry. They are whatever you may call it. So there is a kind of training, kind of uh, things needs to be done to remove
Yeah.
these attitude problems, you might call it. So this cannot be neglected as for and what I see happening around us.
Okay, Sandeep.
So if I look at it, I think that Debasish mentioned the last mile. If I look at the cost structure, it's actually 53% of the entire cost in the value chain is last mile, and this is where everybody is trying to solve because historically, the cities in India, the roads, the bigger trucks cannot enter the city. So last mile has always remained a challenge. So people have tried multiple ways. For example, Amazon, what they have done is they have tied up with a local grocery store who will deliver because they have a bigger reach. People have experimented with the Indian postal services, which has the biggest reach in the country. But again, unless we do something around the infrastructure, but easier said than done, people are experimenting with something like a drone delivery. So there are a lot of startups which have actually come up with very, very innovative solutions. And so I think this is, though there's competition, there is a lot of course, the margins are less, but I think consolidation is happening with some of the bigger players acquiring these smaller players. Partnerships are there, but I think this is a very exciting space. And as like any business, this is a slightly fluid state, but things will consolidate. And given the ecosystem, there will be money for everyone.
I want to remind everyone that you guys can ask questions again using the Q&A button located on the left side of the screen. There's a question here. Someone's asking, given the competition from the tech, the companies and startups in that space, and the market complexity, can traditional 3PLs make money in e-commerce logistics in countries like India, Indonesia, which are known to probably to be a bit more challenging or complex? What's your take on this? Can 3PL still be in the game when they have to compete with all those well-founded tech companies who pretend to be also logistic companies, but we talked about it earlier with a bit more technology on top of it?
So there are two things which are an advantage. For example, that open network digital ONDC platform. Earlier, Amazon, Flipkart, they actually controlled the entire platform, and they used to charge a lot of money from the buyers and the sellers. But with this, I think there's all this anomaly, all this asymmetry is gone. The second is, if you look at it, that QR code payment. I think that is a great innovation where even somebody selling at 5 rupees will be able to accept the money digitally. I think this is two innovations which was backed up by the government of India. I think that has become a great leveler, and I think that will definitely give a lot of muscle to smaller players to actually compete in this market.
Okay, let's go back to the question again. Can traditional 3PLs make money? There's always been a discussion. I remember in last 10 years ago, we were talking about whether the traditional 3PLs, the big players, the big boys 3PLs could actually compete on e-commerce logistics, and with the surge of investment in that sector, there's been a lot of new players obviously coming, taking the market away from 3PLs. And do you think it's still the case? And what would be the competitive edge of 3PLs today in that space? What's your view on this?
I think the technology wise, if they are having the track and trace, and because they already have the infrastructure traditionally built for them, they know the market, they have trained people. So it's not something new they are doing. But the evolvement of technology, like for example, recently one of the 3PL guys have tried drone deliveries and testing that out. This adaptation should be there in order to have that competitive edge which the new players are getting. So they acquire new startups who are doing these new innovations and disruptions, or that shift in mindset should be there even for the traditional players.
André, Debashish?
Should I go first, or yeah? So
Yeah,
yeah,
go ahead, André.
it's a very interesting question. Not exactly the Indian or Asian market, but the last 14, 15 months I've spent with a company based in Europe, GLS Group, which does international shipping as well and last mile. And so the answer to the question, at least in this market, is that they have a couple of advantages. One of them is, of course, the network and the assets they have built over 20, 30 years, while having a bit of a lack of technology and innovation. But they're very closely monitoring what's happening in the startup and in the new sort of ecosystem. And I almost think they save money on innovation by just seeing how things play out, which startup idea is pivoting, which one is working out, and then they either copy the approach, do a M&A, or if they're already too big, if they really manage to grow really fast, then there's always a partnership, which startups always want to do with big companies that have been in the market for a long time. So in my opinion, while yes, there is money to make, I don't think startups will take a lot of their business. Quite the opposite. I think they actually help them to innovate and to be a little bit pushed to also look at new things and new technologies to integrate. Yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting point.
Max?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether that partnership between big 3PLs and startup really happened. There are very few cases of partnership or acquisition, and typically the 3PLs will say, oh, if that company can do it, we have a funding, we can just duplicate it and just create our own technology. Debashish, yeah. What's your view on this?
Max, just before we started this session officially we were discussing, and I said that I have been a part of a startup, okay, and my role was to actually go around, meet customers, and we are trying to create a marketplace for logistics. So I said, while the subject today is e-commerce logistics, I also want to touch upon one of the marketplaces that I worked for was logistics as an e-commerce product. So logistics services. So in the process, while I met some of the FMCG guys, I met some of the manufacturers, whether this particular marketplace is going to work for them. I also in the process met some of the 3PL guys. I met some of the logistics companies, because what we were trying to do was to connect the logistics users, to the logistics service providers. So I'm not going to right away name some of the big 3PL companies that I met in India, right? But they were quite upbeat, saying in the sense that these particular platforms are going to introduce them to maybe new business opportunities, which probably they have not explored so far, because now customer would see a marketplace where they can go and see other competitors. They have been using one particular 3PL, and that marketplace is probably going to introduce them to other companies providing the similar services. So on the flip side, somebody would think that they have an advantage. The others would think that, okay, you're introducing my competitor as well as the marketplace. But on a positive side, these startups actually, I don't think it could be a threat to large 3PL companies, because if you're expecting a very, very complicated end-to-end logistics services all put together, then I don't think 3PL companies would find any threat. And on the contrary, as I said, when I met these companies in India primarily, they said that we welcome such startups, because And obviously, as a startup, we were trying to provide them services that they themselves were trying to provide to their clients directly. For example, providing them data every quarter, every month, number of shipments they're sending, the number of shipments which are being delayed, any issue with shipments, what is the insurance process. So actually, we are trying to facilitate. The 3PLs were very happy saying that, okay, if you could do things that we used to do earlier, and
Yeah.
also introduce us to more options, why not?
Okay. There's some interesting questions coming up here. So let me take them one by one. First one is about drone delivery. I think Sandeep, you touched upon that point. Drone delivery, like pioneering Irish firm Mana Aero, has this space in last mile in India, but we can probably also ask a question about in other countries. If a truck cannot get to a city, so is drone delivery really working? What do you see is, or it's just hype? Because I mean, in many markets, let's talk about Asia again. Airspace is restricted. There's a lot of limitation within cities, or around the city. So do you see the drone delivery really happening, probably more in countryside or rural areas? And are those companies actually, having the model work for their clients?
No, I agree that with the kind of restrictions and the defense, if you say limitations, like there are issues around permissions. But looking at the way things are going, we have seen some pilots being successful in terms of drone delivery. But from a country to country perspective, it again, if there are a lot of other factors like government regulations. For example, some countries allow this free open space, but for other countries, I think that is still active. But the pilots have been quite successful. That's what I have seen. But it still is a while before we see the government actually giving the go ahead because of security concerns.
Okay. Tejasvie, have you seen this model work in region like the Middle East, for example?
Yeah, recently, in the recent past of last 6 to 7 months, multiple logistics players have started doing these trials with Indian startups, basically. Startups coming here and working on 3 months project and doing a pilot. Recently, I had my friend who's already working on a drone delivery startup. Yeah, they are, like Sandeep said, there are security concerns and all of that, but I think UAE is more open towards advancement of this because advancement in the sense it's like the space restrictions, etc., it's easier here considering the size of the country, and the monitoring they have good set of satellite monitoring, etc., all over the country. So it's I could see that we are heading towards that direction. That's where the logistics players were given a chance to trial these out. But for them also, the major chunk of the deliveries come from the e-commerce players or the postal services, etc. So that transition, how big of a change it would make, we are yet to see. Like for example, Amazons and Noons of the world won't deliver with these companies until and unless after certain volume. Till then, they all have their own assets and logistics systems in place. That transition, we still have time to see that.
Okay. Debashish, Andre, what's your take on drone delivery? Yeah.
Well, as far India is concerned, first of all, drone, yes, we can see usage of drone increasing, but whether it's for deliveries of e-commerce, I still have my doubts. We do see once in a while DHL probably or somebody has attempted a difficult delivery, a place affected by flood or something. Drones have been of great use, but to make drone delivery a normal day-to-day practice, it'll take time. I said initially that I was associated with one of the ports as a consultant. Ports, for example, they have been using, institutions or organizations like ports. They would be using these drones very effectively in order to monitor surveillance, and because some of the ports are extremely large. Okay, they have many birds and several containers coming in and out. So I think drone would be a very, very effective, and while being there at the port, I could see them have a long-term strategy of introducing drone for securities, etc. But as I said, since we are discussing about deliveries, e-commerce deliveries, faster deliveries, I see that happening right now on very, very selective cases when we have absolute, lack of access to that delivery point. Otherwise, as I said, to make it a kind of a regular delivery, as Tejasvie rightly said, that probably we still are following the same, the older model of deliveries. Drone definitely is going to happen in future. Probably.
André, what's your view? Is this a reality in countries like Thailand?
Yeah, it's a good question. I was thinking what to answer on this. It's, I mean, there's startups doing this, and I think companies look into it, but I think it will take time. Yeah, I think most things have been said. I mean, there's also regulations. Max, you mentioned airspace regulations. Also, it's tough. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but yeah, I think in between we will see a couple of other innovations before drone really becomes a main way to deliver products. But I think in the end, if you look at last mile delivery, it's very intense in terms of human capital, and I think at some point this will have change. Salaries will increase and stuff. So at some point we need to figure out ways to deliver with less humans involved, especially on the last mile side.
Okay. There's another question which is interesting. We also relate to those changing models. So someone is asking, in Malaysia, there's a lot of shopfront neighborhood DC versus warehouse size DC. Is this a dominant approach? He's talking about India, but is this also working? So the way that and we're going back to our early discussion about the stores are now starting to act as a decentralized warehouse versus having those huge big DC in the suburbs of those big cities. Do you see that more and more happening? Is this a working model for a number of companies?
If I may, Max, uh, in India, I find, though the Q-commerce sector is probably right now 7% of the total e-commerce industry, approximately, but it's growing very fast. It has been growing to an extent of, I believe, 17 to 18%. I am personally, as an individual, and I can see everybody in my neighborhood, utilizing Q-commerce, and the other, Tejasvie was mentioning about deliveries in 10 minutes. It is happening here, okay? And particularly for the groceries, etc., which we do not want to store a large number. We do not want to create a lot of stock of spices or whatever you may call it. So that's really growing fast, and we now see decentralized, not very big warehouses, but in different areas, they're trying to create a place where they can stock a sizable amount. Because so far, I've never come across a stock out. I've never come across a particular company called Instamart, in which probably Sandeep would be familiar with. Instamart, they never fail to deliver any product that I have ordered, except for an exception of a very heavy rainfall and almost a flood-like situation. Otherwise, whatever that I have ordered so far, anything that has to do with my day-to-day needs, it has been delivered within 10 to 12 minutes flat.
Okay. Tejasvie, I know you're involved in quick commerce, so is this the way to make it work, having smaller stores, stock?
Look, I think so. I'll comment first on India, right? So, India currently, the way it is, the complexity on the last mile and all of that, what these companies like Instamart or Zepto have done is have a small size DC very closer in your radius. And the SKU count which they maintain is close to 7,000 to 8,000 SKUs with the days of cover of close to 7, 8 days maximum. And they get fresh deliveries on a daily basis. So when I say fresh deliveries or the replenishment happening on daily basis, this happens through two modes. One is from the direct to vendor. So there's no storage cost that is involved to you. And next set is basically your long-term commodities, which can be bought in a bulk, and those are stored across somewhere far off from the city. So that replenishment keeps happening on a daily, alternate day basis. So while we see that, now I live in a place back home in Jubilee Hills. I get a delivery in 8 minutes because the dark store, the dark store is very closer to my place. So this is how they have made it. Like for example, in a city like Bangalore, which has 60 stores, the amount of orders they're able to do on a daily basis is 95,000 orders. And this is only 0.3% consumption of the city, of the entire city's grocery. So these are some numbers which are already like in place. And moving on to Dubai, like initially what we have tried out is, okay, let's try out having a bigger warehouse. We have a bigger warehouse outside the city. And compared to India, Dubai is not so big, right? You have closer Emirates, and you can do multiple deliveries and all of that. And only fresh, let's get directly to the store. But then later on, as we have seen the market transitioning to a faster replenishment, faster out of stocks, and also the need of assortment is increased, the sizes of the stores have become a slightly bigger. Now we have bigger stores, but also the replenishment is happening like once in a day in a Dubai kind of a situation where we are able to deliver, where we are able to order, like each store at least does 2,000 to 2,500 orders with an ITO of 7, 8 units. So at these numbers, the stores are still sustainable to have in the vicinity of these areas. Instead of having a longer, look, if I start delivering from the warehouse, again, the complexity is even more, and I can't deliver in 10 minutes. I can't beat the competition. Like this is the different scenarios which India is taking a turn into. And I think with the like Zepto is pretty clean and clear on their model of having Toyota's approach on ground. Like their people are so trained. And while in Noon, what we are doing right now is, okay, whether each store is sustainable or what do we do about it? Wherever the store is not sustainable, we are adding more assortment, which is electronics and all of that, and getting the GMV out of it. So that's how the two models are working right now.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's good. Sandeep, Andre?
So looking at it, I think what Debashish and Tejasvie mentioned, I think with this 10-minute delivery and all that, companies have understood that you still need to have those buffer stocks close to the markets. So there are tie-ups which are happening with the local grocery stores so that companies don't have to invest in a kind of a space. But there are dark stores also when it comes to grocery items, which are actually, because within the city there are limitations on the infrastructure. The bigger trucks cannot go in. There is a space shortage. So we are seeing more of these storage points actually reality. While the bigger warehouses are outside the city where we have more space, but this is now has become more of a norm because again the customer has become impatient and customer tolerance time is reduced drastically, and in order to cater to all the, in fact, a very interesting conversation I had with somebody, like say for trucks. Earlier the trucks were sent, and now whenever they order a truck, they're asking when will you deliver it, can you deliver it in 4 hours. So I think this is the mindset change which has changed across all sectors.
Thank you. Andre?
Yeah, super interesting. Yeah. There's one example in Thailand I can maybe mention. 7-Eleven here with about 13,000 stores at the moment. They're also trying to double this number in the next 5 years. Would of course be a very prominent example of this, of having such a business model executed, right? Because they already have DCs across the country, like you guys said, mostly outside of the urban areas. But then a lot of 7-Elevens very center, but also reachable for remote areas. So I think in Thailand, the conglomerate will be the first executing this, and they're already preparing for this on the logistics side. So yeah, it will be interesting, and not just groceries and food, but also various other items that people want to have delivered through E-Commerce.
So will the marketplace actually try to partner with companies like 7-Eleven to provide the products, and and also do the delivery? Or because 7-Eleven has very limited staff, we don't have a lot of back room, for products. So how will that work from a 7-Eleven point of
Sure.
view? Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see the details. I think a lot of things, a lot of ways have to be tested. So I can just remember when we started delivery for 7-Eleven, we also tested various models. One of them was kind of the Grab model, where there are floating riders across different areas. And then we finally ended up with having riders directly employed and positioned at the stores. So that maybe answers part of your question, that there are already extra employees just for delivery. Those people are also trained in terms of stock keeping, stock management, reshelving, those kind of things. So they're proper employees, not just guys or girls on bikes. So I think that problem can be solved relatively easy. Just the connection between the DC and the stores the frequency probably has to go up a little bit to make sure that a wider range of products is available. And I think in terms of the space, I think there is quite a bit of space in most 7-Elevens on the back. Sometimes they even have a second floor, just customers don't see it. It's usually behind the fridges. So there is a bit of space. And if you've been to Thailand recently, 7-Eleven really tries to change the format a little bit to more of a small groceries shop store rather than just a convenience store, including parking in front. So all the new, if it's possible, all the new store formats have parking in front. This comes back to kind of EV charging in the future.
Yeah.
That's another story because people need to wait for the cars to be charged. But yeah, the model is shifting, and that's why I think in Thailand at least this will be innovated by conglomerates rather than startups. Because startups have tried it. I know that Foodpanda has tried the dark store model more intensively. Happy Fresh, which is not in Thailand anymore, has tried it for the left market. It's a bit of a tough one, but I think it will come. Yes.
Okay. We have a few more minutes before we wrap up the discussion, but we have a question again which relate to one of the topic we wanted to cover is around sustainability and e-commerce logistics. Someone is saying in Indonesia and Philippines, there's a US marketplace called Hive Brands that offer delivery when there's a sufficient volume to your neighborhood as an environment consideration. Is this a trend that works for the Southeast Asia consumer? Do you think there is a demand for this kind of way of ordering? So again, delivery will only happen when there is enough demand, enough volume for a specific neighborhood. What's your view on this? I know Sandeep, you are very involved in this, and what kind of push those companies are doing when it comes to sustainability? Do they adopt this kind of methodology?
I think it's a very interesting thing because if I look at it, the customer tolerance time has reduced. So if I say a 10-minute delivery, which Blinkit does, but when I look at these people who are driving this vehicle, the kind of stress they are into, I think who needs a grocery in 10 minutes? I really don't know, unless it's an emergency situation. In fact, a very interesting study which was done by Amazon, which said that the maximum satisfaction happens when you have a 8 to 10 hour delivery, not a 10-minute delivery. So I think people have now realized that in order to grow fast, impatience in the consumer, but again, it's a mindset change, and companies are actually trying to educate the customers that this is what, unless it's an emergency situation, we are not delivering. This is good from a sustainability point of view because having more electric vehicles is not the answer, because if you're still using a fossil fuel to actually charge your electric vehicles, that doesn't help. We don't want more vehicles. I think that way, I think that is a good thing. Second thing, in terms of packaging, of course, people believe that plastic is bad. So it's not that all plastic is bad, but because if I go for a paper packaging, you are cutting out a tree. So even in terms of packaging, we are seeing some of these sustainable initiatives. And in fact, if you return the packaging, you get some money back. So I think these are some of the things the e-commerce firms are trying it out to educate the customer, because as I said, it's a more of a mindset change rather than, because earlier when we used to have our pens, right, we used to have those refills. Then the use and throw
Yeah.
revolution happened because that was a mindset change. People found it convenient. So once again, the mindset is changed. I think this will be quite easier said than done, but I think everybody has to be involved in. No one
Okay.
person can do it alone.
Tejasvie, are you promoting green practice when it comes to delivery or within your marketplace?
Yes, we are. For example, part of our fleet is Q-commerce fleet is into EV bikes and all of that. Also, cycle deliveries we do because it's very small place and we have closer by dark store network. We deliver by cycle, we deliver by scooters, we deliver by walking as well. So the multiple modes and coming a little ahead into the spectrum of companies which Noon has. Noon, the food deliveries are also delivered by EVs, and and also in the whole scale where you have Noon retail, there the packaging is all sustainable. At least 60, like how Sandeep said, for grocery, the box. If you return the box, there is a certain amount of money you get back. Similar to that, it's a similar way we do it for Noon retail core items because that's the huge scale of number of orders that goes out on a daily basis. Um, Honestly, yes, but the consciousness of the people is increased because of government initiative as well here. Now here, in case you want to take if you don't have a uh, jute bag or something, you want to take a plastic or a paper bag, you need to pay 50 fills for every paper bag, you know. So people are more conscious in terms of carrying their own bag compared to last year to this year. I'm seeing that shift whenever I'm going out and just observing. But it would take time until the awareness is more evident on the lifestyle. I don't think it'll hit us hard on the face. And I think it's time for that.
Okay. André, Debashish, I mean, greenwashing in e-commerce, basically quite a lot of them. What's your view on
Greenwashing
that?
is its own topic, I think. But
See, Max, Cotter long back has said that if you want to bring about a change, you have to indicate the urgency of the change, right? So, to be very honest, as Tejasvie very rightly said, uh, to be very honest, a government has been taking a lot of initiative in implementing this particular change in terms of using, eco-friendly packaging, etc., etc. But it is the initiative that individuals or organizations they have to take. Otherwise, you may have, and in a country like India, and now with the kind of population that you have, the country is growing economically, the business organization growing. So I believe that if the government is serious about these changes and we keep pushing people, and logistics is one sector for there's no doubt that road transportation itself, okay, and there has to be very strict administration. Otherwise, people will keep on using vehicles which will pollute as they always said, penalty is the biggest form of, or fear is the biggest form of motivation, and that needs to increase, and it's happening. I can see a lot of changes because I have been in industry where we use a lot of packaging materials like stretch films, like the packing materials, okay, the corrugated sheets, etc. And we were because since I worked for companies who were multinational, they were based out of. I worked for Crown, was an American company. I worked for AGS, who was a French company. They were very, very conscious as a global organization, very conscious about
Yeah.
these factors. So they encouraged us to get these packing materials returned and recycled, and we used to do it. And we used to actually reward our ground level, the movers or the workers to get as much packing materials as possible so they can be recycled, and we are not using any new materials and consuming new materials. So
Okay.
I definitely see a change at initiatives from the government, but now it's up to us to actually make that happen.
André, final comment.
I
We're
make it
wrapping up.
very
Yeah.
short, but
Yeah.
it's a very frustrating topic for me, I think, because in Thailand, the government forced the retailers to change to degradable plastic, which is great. But there also needs to be some checks what kind of plastic is used now. But then if I look at food delivery itself and the kind of plastic that comes with just one dish, it's ridiculous. So there needs to be something happening. You can have a lunch and you end up with kilos of plastic that has been used once. And also paper, I agree, is not the solution. So it's a very frustrating topic. And I think rather than looking at the CO2 topic first, let's fix the waste and plastic topic as well.
It's a all new topic, and we could then speak and talk about it for another hour. But that's probably for a different event. So it's the end of this discussion. Thank you very much again for joining us. Thanks, André, Sandeep, Tejasvie, and Debasish for being with us today. I want to also thank the audience for all those questions. This again, part of an ongoing discussion. We'll do this again another time on the same topic and explore some other topics which relate to e-commerce logistics across Asia and the Middle East. So thanks again for joining, and we look forward to see you next time.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.